What happens when a self-made millionaire decides his pregnant wife is no longer good enough? He finds a new, glamorous replacement, a famous actress. He serves his wife, Elara, with divorce papers, offering her scraps, intending to toss her aside like yesterday's news. He wants her gone before his big IPO. But he made one fatal miscalculation. He thought he married a simple art curator. He didn't realize he married Elara Vance, the sole heiress to the $80 billion Vance Global Steel Dynasty. And she's not going anywhere. The penthouse on Fifth Avenue was a symphony of beige, chrome, and glass. It was Julian Thorne's masterpiece, a monument to his arrival. Julian, a man who had clawed his way up from a middle-class upbringing in Ohio to become a minor titan of New York private equity, loved telling the story. He'd founded Thorne Capital with a small inheritance and unrelenting vision, and was now, at 38, on the cusp of true, undeniable wealth, a multi-billion-dollar IPO. His wife, Elara, preferred the library. It was the one room she'd been allowed to design. While the rest of the 8,000-square-foot apartment was Julian's cold shrine, the library was warm, filled with books, antique maps, and the faint, comforting scent of old paper and jasmine tea. Elara Thorne, née Vance, a name she hadn't used in 6 years, was, to the outside world, the perfect founder's wife. Beautiful in a quiet, aristocratic way, with intelligent grey eyes and a calm demeanour that contrasted with Julian's restless, crackling energy. She was an art curator, specialising in obscure Renaissance pieces, a job Julian found charming and appropriate for a woman who didn't need to work. He had no idea that her charming job was a simple passion, a way to stay sane while hiding from a life she never wanted. He had no idea that her family, the Vances, could buy and sell his entire building with the petty cash from their quarterly dividends. Elara had met Julian at a Sotheby's auction. He was bidding, loudly and competitively, on a gaudy, modern piece. She was there to consult on a lost Titian. He'd been charmed by her unimpressed air. She had been charmed by his drive, his ambition, and the fact that he'd never heard the name Vance in connection with anything other than a long-dead brand of tool and die. He saw her as Elara Vance, the broke graduate student with expensive taste. She let him. She had been running from the Vance Global Steel empire, from her formidable father, Marcus Vance, who believed love was a variable in a balance sheet. She wanted to be loved for herself. Julian, it seemed, did. Now, 6 years later, Elara was 5 months pregnant. She sat in the library, one hand on the gentle curve of her stomach, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety that had been tightening for weeks. Julian was changing. He was never a warm man, but he had been attentive. Now, he was absent. The late nights, once IPO prep, were now just meetings. The business trips to Los Angeles, once rare, were now weekly. He'd become obsessed with his phone, angling it away from her with a casualness that was deeply, precisely studied. "You're nesting in this dusty old room again," he said, standing in the doorway. He wasn't in his usual Tom Ford suit. He wore a black silk shirt, unbuttoned one button too many, and a new, ridiculously expensive Patek Philippe, the Sky Moon tourbillon she'd seen him eyeing online. It must have cost $500,000. "Just reading to the baby," Elara murmured, closing the book. "Are you packing? I thought the LA trip was next week." "It's been moved up. Client dinner." He was barely looking at her, checking his reflection in the dark glass of a framed map. "We're celebrating the pre-IPO valuation. Morgan Stanley is ecstatic." "That's wonderful, Julian." She stood, moving to kiss him. He offered a cheek, his scent a mix of expensive cologne and something else, a faint floral perfume that wasn't hers. "Don't wait up," he said, patting her stomach distractedly. "Big day." He left. The apartment, her gilded cage, suddenly felt suffocatingly quiet. Later that night, she saw a new alert from page 6 on her iPad, a perk of Julian's new social climbing obsession. The headline was, "Tech Titan, Julian Thorne gets cozy with Serafina Hayes at Chateau Marmont." There was a photo, Julian laughing, his arm draped possessively around the waist of a stunning, flame-haired woman. Serafina Hayes was a B-list actress with an A-list reputation for breaking up marriages. She was wearing a dress that left nothing to the imagination, and in the photo, Julian was wearing the exact suit he had claimed was at the dry cleaners last week. The knot in Ilara's chest became a cold, hard stone. The scent on his collar wasn't just perfume, it was Serafina's signature scent. Scandal. Ilara knew this because Julian had bought a bottle of it for her last month, claiming a colleague recommended it. She'd hated it. Now she knew why. He wasn't buying a gift. He was practicing an alibi. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in gaslighting. Serafina Hayes, she's a potential investor. Her father is some old money oil guy. You're being paranoid, Ilara. It's the hormones. Chateau Marmont, it was a networking event. Page 6 always exaggerates. You know that. Why are you so insecure? I'm building an empire for us, for this family, and you're in here crying over a tabloid. I need you to be the strong, supportive wife, Ilara. Not this mess. He was good. He was so good that for a few days she almost believed him. She tried to push the image of his hand on Serafina's waist out of her mind. She tried to focus on the baby, on the nursery she was painting, in a soft, neutral grey. But the cracks were spreading. Julian's phone now had a new passcode. He took calls in the high-tech, soundproofed Zoom room he'd had installed, locking the door. And the joint credit card statements, which Ilara usually managed, were suddenly being handled by my new accountant, according to Julian. Just to streamline things before the IPO. All assets need to be consolidated under Thorne Capital. Ilara wasn't a fool. She was a Vance. She may have rejected her family's money, but she had not rejected their education. She knew what consolidating assets before a major financial event meant. It meant he was moving things, hiding them. The final brutal crack came on a Tuesday evening. Julian was supposed to be in a red-eye board meeting on a video call. Ilara had a doctor's appointment, a checkup on the baby. The pregnancy, her doctor warned, was becoming high risk. Her blood pressure was dangerously elevated. "You need to eliminate stress, Mrs. Thorne," Dr. Alistair said, his face grave. "Whatever is happening in your life, it's affecting you and the baby." Heart pounding with a new kind of fear, not just for her marriage, but for her child, Ilara returned to the penthouse. She needed to tell Julian. She needed to make him listen. The apartment was dark. He wasn't home. His red-eye meeting was clearly a lie. She sat on the cold designer sofa in the living room, the city lights glittering below, and waited. At 2:17 a.m. the elevator chimed, opening directly into the foyer. Julian stumbled in, his tie gone, his silk shirt stained with lipstick. Not just a smudge, but a clear, deliberate mark high on his collar. And with him, giggling, was Serafina Hayes, wrapped in his $10,000 cashmere overcoat. They both froze when they saw Ilara, silhouetted in the dim light. Serafina, to her credit, was the first to recover. She let out a small, theatrical gasp. "Oh, Julian, darling," she purred, her voice a throaty whisper. "You didn't tell me she'd be awake." Julian's face, for a split second, showed panic. Then it hardened into something Elara had never seen before. Pure, unadulterated contempt. "Elara," he said, his voice cold and flat. "Go to bed." "Get her out," Elara said, her voice shaking, but low and steady. She refused to scream. Vance never screamed. "Excuse me?" Julian stepped forward. "This is my home." "Get this woman," Elara said, her eyes locked on Serafina. "Out of my home." Serafina laughed, a tinkling, awful sound. "Oh, honey, no. This is my home now. Or it will be. Julian's just cleaning out the old inventory." Elara's gaze shifted to Julian. She said nothing. She just waited. Julian sighed, a put-upon, exasperated sound, as if he were the one being inconvenienced. He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, Elara, it's over. I've been meaning to tell you." "It's over," Elara repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Just like that." "It's not just like that. We've been growing apart for months. You've been so distant, so wrapped up in this baby." He said the word baby as if it were an infestation. "Julian," Serafina whispered, tugging on his arm. "Let's go to the mark. We can let her process." "Right," Julian said, straightening his jacket. He turned to Elara. "We'll talk in the morning. My lawyer will be in touch. I suggest you get one of your own." He didn't even look at her as he guided Serafina back into the elevator. The doors slid shut, leaving Elara alone in the foyer, the scent of scandal and cheap victory hanging in the air. She stood there for a full minute before her knees buckled. She didn't fall. She deliberately sank to the cold marble floor, her hands protectively cradling her stomach as the first, sharp, terrifying cramp of preterm labor seized her. The next morning, Elara woke up in a guest room. She didn't remember moving. The cramps had subsided to a dull ache, but the terror remained. There was a noise in the foyer. Not Julian. A tall man in a sharp, unfamiliar suit was placing a thick, leather-bound folder on the hall console table. He saw her and flinched, as if startled to find her there. "Mrs. Thorne?" he asked. He was a bike messenger, but one who specialized in legal documents. "Yes?" "This is for you. From Skadden Arps. You need to sign here, acknowledging receipt." Skadden, Arps, Slate, Merga, and Flom. Julian wasn't just getting a lawyer. He was getting a legion, the most ruthless, expensive corporate and divorce firm in the city. She signed. The man left. Elara opened the folder. The first page was a petition for divorce. The second was a proposed marital settlement agreement. She read it, and the world tilted. Julian, citing irreconcilable differences, was filing for a swift, no-fault divorce. He was demanding it be finalized in 30 days. The reason was buried in the financial jargon. To ensure financial clarity and asset protection prior to the Thorne Capital IPO, initial public offering. He wasn't just divorcing her. He was clearing a liability off his balance sheet. Then she saw the generous offer. In recognition of their 6-year marriage, and, in good faith, pending a conclusive paternity test for the unborn child, Julian Thorne was offering 1. A one-time, non-negotiable payout of $500,000. 2. A 2-bedroom condominium in Murray Hill, a nice but utterly unglamorous neighborhood. 3. A modest child support sum, contingent on the aforementioned paternity test proving his fatherhood. 4. A comprehensive, ironclad non-disclosure agreement, barring Elara from ever speaking about Julian, his business, his personal life, or their marriage, under penalty of forfeiting the entire settlement. $500,000. He was about to make billions on an IPO. He was offering her, his wife of 6 years and the mother of his child, $500,000, and an apartment in a neighborhood he wouldn't even drive through. The line about the paternity test was the deepest cut. It wasn't just an insult, it was a legal strategy. It was designed to paint her as an unfaithful, gold-digging opportunist, a narrative that would play well for him with his new, glossy magazine-reading investors. She felt a wave of nausea, followed by a cold, clarifying rage. This wasn't just a breakup. This was an execution. He was trying to erase her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Not, "I'm sorry," or "Can we talk?" Just a cold, single line. "My lawyer sent the papers. It's a very generous offer. Sign it, Elara. Don't make this ugly. It's better for everyone." Better for everyone. He meant better for him. Better for Serafina. Better for the IPO. In the midst of her rage, she saw him. He wasn't on TV, not yet. He was outside, across the street, on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a place they used to go. He was posing for a phalanx of photographers. He was not alone. Serafina Hayes was on his arm, dazzling in a red dress, her hand placed strategically on his chest. They were laughing, kissing for the cameras. A planned, public debut. He's divorcing me in a legal document, while simultaneously debuting his new relationship on the steps of the Met. Elara walked to the window, the 40-page insult in her hand. She watched them. Julian looked up, directly at their apartment window, and his smile widened. He couldn't see her, but he knew she'd be watching. He raised a hand, not in a wave, but in a toast to his own victory. The arrogance, the sheer, unadulterated hubris. He thought she was weak. He thought she was a simple, penniless art curator. He thought $500,000 would be a windfall for her. He thought she'd be so scared of the paternity test threat that she would sign the NDA, take the scraps, and disappear. He had forgotten one very important thing. She was pregnant, yes. She was heartbroken, absolutely. But she was not weak, and she was not penniless. "You want ugly, Julian?" Elara whispered to the window, her hand moving from her stomach to her phone. "You have no idea how ugly a Vance can be." The next 48 hours were a descent into a special kind of hell. Elara's first call was to her OB-GYN, Dr. Alistair. The stress of the confrontation and the legal papers had triggered another round of sharp, terrifying cramps. "Elara, I'm not mincing words," he said over the phone, his voice tight with concern. "You have placenta previa, and your blood pressure is critical. You are risking a preterm delivery and your own life. You must be on immediate, total bed rest. I want you admitted to Weill Cornell for observation." "I can't," Elara said, her voice thin. "Not right now. Julian, I can't go to the hospital right now. Elara, this isn't a suggestion. This is a medical order. Please," she begged, "give me 24 hours. I have to secure a few things. I'll stay in bed, I promise, in the penthouse. I'll have food delivered. I won't move." He hesitated, a long, unhappy sigh. "Fine. 24 hours. If your pressure isn't down by tomorrow, I'm sending an ambulance. And Elara, whatever it is, it's not worth your child's life." She hung up, shaking. She went online to order groceries, a week's worth of simple, healthy food she could prepare from the penthouse kitchen without leaving. Her card was declined. Account status: frozen. She tried her debit card, linked to their joint checking account. Frozen. She tried her Amex, the one Julian had insisted she get, the Black Centurion card. Frozen. He hadn't just filed for divorce, he had cut her off, completely. In the 12 hours since he'd left with Serafina, his lawyers had filed an emergency petition with a family court judge, claiming Elara was emotionally unstable and a financial flight risk who might liquidate marital assets out of spite. The judge, seeing only the Thorn capital letterhead and the Scadden, ARPS filing, had granted a temporary freeze on all joint accounts. She was trapped, 5 months pregnant, on doctor-ordered bed rest, in an 8,000-square-foot penthouse with no access to money. She looked in her wallet. She had 87 baubles in cash. The intercom buzzed. It was the doorman, a man who usually greeted her with a warm smile. His voice was stiff, professional. "Mrs. Thorn, a Mr. Belson is here to see you. He says you're expecting him." "I'm not," she started. "He's from Julian Thorn's legal team. He has clearance." The elevator doors opened, and a man who looked more like a bouncer than a lawyer stepped out, holding a small box. "Mrs. Thorn," he said, not meeting her eyes. "I'm here to deliver this, and to oversee a transition." "A transition?" He handed her the box. Inside was a cheap, prepaid burner phone and a set of keys. "Mr. Thorn has arranged for you to be moved to the Murray Hill condominium, as outlined in the settlement proposal. His new associate will be arriving shortly to begin redecorating the penthouse." Elara stared at him. "He's kicking me out." "He's providing you with shelter, ma'am," the man said, reciting a line. "The new tenant, Miss Seraphina Hayes, has a design team arriving at 4 p.m. Mr. Thorn requests you vacate the premises by then." It was 1 p.m. He was giving her 3 hours. Pregnant, high risk, and penniless, he was throwing her out of her home and handing the keys to his mistress. "My clothes," Elara whispered, panic rising. My things. The nursery. Mr. Thorn has arranged for your personal effects to be moved to the new location. The items in the nursery have been placed in storage, as their, provenance is in question." The paternity test. He was even holding the baby's crib hostage over the paternity test. This was the lowest point. This was the bottom. He wasn't just divorcing her. He was attempting to annihilate her, to strip her of her home, her health, her dignity, and her child, all in one swift, brutal stroke. He thought this would break her. He thought this would be the final push that would make her sign the papers, take the $87 in her wallet and the keys to the condo, and disappear. The man, Belson, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm instructed to wait here until you have left." Elara looked at the man. She looked at the burner phone. She looked at the keys. Then she looked past him, at the portrait of Julian's smug face, a Man of the Year award painting, hanging in the foyer. She felt the baby kick, a faint, insistent flutter. It was a reminder. You are not alone, and you are not weak. "Mr. Belson," she said, her voice suddenly devoid of all its earlier tremor. It was cold. It was steel. "You may wait, but I suggest you get comfortable. I have one phone call to make, and I'm not going to Murray Hill." "Ma'am, you have to." "I have to do nothing," Elara said, turning her back on him. "Get out of my way. I need to use the library." She walked past him, her head held high, and entered the one room that was hers. She locked the heavy oak doors. She ignored Belson's insistent, then panicked, knocking. She sat at her antique desk. She didn't pick up the burner phone. She didn't pick up her iPhone, which Julian was undoubtedly tracking. She opened a locked drawer in her desk. Inside, beneath a first-edition copy of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, was a simple, old-fashioned satellite phone. It was brick-heavy, clunky, and utterly untraceable by conventional means. A gift from her father. "For emergencies," he had said. She powered it on. It beeped, connecting to a private Vance global satellite. She dialed a number from memory, a number she had not dialed in 6 long, stubborn years. It rang once. A crisp, familiar, no-nonsense voice answered. "Read." Ilara let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for her entire marriage. A single tear, not of sadness, but of relief, traced a path down her cheek. "Evelyn," Ilara said. "It's me. It's Ilara Vance." There was a half-second of stunned silence. Then the voice on the other end shifted from lawyer to protector. "Lara, my God, are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm in New York, Evelyn, and I'm in trouble. I'm pregnant, and my husband is trying to erase me." "Give me the address," Evelyn Reed said, her voice turning to ice. "The Vance jet is on the tarmac at Teterboro. We're wheels up in 20 minutes. We'll be there in 3 hours. "Evelyn, he's Julian Thorne. He has Skadden, ARPS. He's freezing my assets. He's trying to take my baby." A dry, mirthless laugh came over the line. "Skadden ARPS? How quaint. Lara, listen to me. Don't sign anything. Don't talk to anyone. Don't leave the building. Lock your door. We're coming. And tell me, this Julian Thorne, is he a publicly traded man?" "Not yet," Ilara said, a dark, unfamiliar power rising in her. "He's planning an IPO for Thorne Capital in 30 days. 30 days, Evelyn mused. Oh, that's more than enough time. "Evelyn, he's not just going to lose a divorce, Lara," Evelyn Reed said, the sound of a private jet engine whining in the background. "He's going to lose everything." The 3 hours Ilara waited were the strangest of her life. Mr. Belson, the legal goon, had pounded on the library door for 20 minutes before giving up, apparently intimidated by the sheer, solid oak authority of the door. He was now pacing in the foyer, making frantic, whispered calls to Julian's lawyers. Ilara, meanwhile, sat in her father's worn leather armchair. She drank a glass of water. She ate an apple she'd had in her desk. She placed her hands on her stomach and spoke to her baby. "It's all right," she murmured. "Mummy just had to make a call. The family is coming." At 3:47 p.m., the penthouse intercom buzzed, a long, aggressive series of beeps. Mr. Belson, thinking it was Serafina's design team, practically ran to answer it. "Yes?" he snapped into the speaker. The doorman's voice, usually so placid, was trembling. "Sir, there are 3. There's a motorcade, sir. 3 black Rolls-Royce Phantoms and 2 Maybachs. They've blocked the entrance to the building. They say they're here for Mrs. Thorne." Belson went pale. "What? Who are they?" "We're not expecting. They're not asking for permission, sir. They're already on their way up. They have their own elevator key." Belson fumbled with his phone, no doubt to call Julian, but it was too late. The private elevator doors slid open, but it wasn't a team of flamboyant interior designers. It was Evelyn Reed. Evelyn was a woman built of sharp angles and sharper intellect. She was in her late 50s, with a severe black bob, and wore a custom-made black Armani suit. She was, in Ilara's father's words, the only person who scared the SEC. She was the chief legal counsel for Vance Global Steel, and she managed the Vance family's private, multi-billion-dollar trust. She was not alone. Behind her stood 4 men. They were not lawyers. They were tall, impossibly broad, and wore identical, simple black suits with earpieces. This was the Vance family's private security detail, all former Mossad or MI6. Mr. Belson looked like he was about to faint. "You," Evelyn said, not to Belson, but to one of her security team. "Get that woman's bags, the ones by the door." She pointed to the 2 small suitcases Ilara had packed in a daze. "These," Evelyn said, kicking one of the designer suitcases Serafina had left in the hall, "are not hers. Throw them in the service hall." "Yes, ma'am," one of the security men said. "And you," Evelyn said, finally fixing Mr. Belson with a stare so cold it could freeze hydrogen. "Who are you?" I'm Belson, from Skadden, Arps. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Thorne. Ma'am, Mrs. Thorne, you have to vacate. This is—" Evelyn held up a single, manicured hand. "Stop talking. You're trespassing." "I am not. This is Mr. Thorne's residence. And this is the marital residence," Evelyn snapped, "of which my client, Elara Vance Thorne, owns 50%, regardless of what's in your fraudulent, unfiled emergency order brief. You are a non-resident. You are therefore trespassing. Heiress," she said to the lead security man, "remove him." "You can't touch me. I'm a lawyer," Belson shrieked as Heiress, a man the size of a small mountain, grabbed him by the arm. "He's not touching you," Evelyn said calmly. "He's escorting you. You have two options. You can walk to the service elevator, or you can be carried. Your choice." Belson, white with rage and fear, yanked his arm free. "You'll be hearing from us. This is assault. This is Tuesday, Mr. Belson," Evelyn said, already bored. "Tell Mr. Arps that Evelyn Reed sends her regards, and tell him that the Vance family's private counsel, Reed and Vanguard, will be handling this. Now, get out." Belson scrambled into the service elevator. The library doors opened. Elara stood there, pale but composed. Evelyn's entire demeanor softened. She rushed to Elara, enveloping her in a hug. "Oh, Lara, look at you. You're too thin. And God, you're pregnant." "5 months," Elara whispered, clinging to her. "Evelyn, he froze everything. He's kicking me out." "He's not," Evelyn said, her voice pure steel again. "He's not doing anything. We're leaving. But not to Murray Hill." She turned to her team. "Heiress, take Mrs. Thorne. Be gentle. 2 men stay here. Secure the apartment. Change the locks. Nothing leaves this apartment. Nothing. Especially not the art, the furniture, or the contents of the nursery. Mr. Thorne's community property is now in legal dispute. Let Miss Hayes's design team know they can schedule an appointment with me." "Where are we going?" Elara asked, as Heiress gently guided her toward the elevator. "Will Cornell first. Your father already spoke to Dr. Alistair. Your old friend, Dr. Alistair, by the way. Your father funded his entire cardiothoracic wing. You're not just getting a room, you're getting the entire 10th floor maternity ward. It's been cleared." "After that," Evelyn said, stepping into the elevator with her, "we're going to the St. Regis. Your father secured the presidential suite. Indefinitely." They descended in the opulent, wood-paneled elevator. "My father," Elara said, dreading the answer. "Is he furious that I'm like this?" Evelyn gave a rare, thin smile. "Oh, Lara, your father is incandescent. He's not angry at you. He's angry he didn't see this. He's angry this fintech parasite touched you. He's angry you were right," Evelyn said. "You ran away to see if someone would love you for you. You got your answer. It was no. Now he gets to give his answer." The elevator doors opened to the lobby. It was a circus. The lobby was full of Julian's building staff, all staring as the Vance security team formed a perfect, protective diamond around Elara and Evelyn. The doorman rushed to open the main door. Outside, the street was, as he'd said, blocked. The 3 Rolls-Royce Phantoms sat there, engines idling, a statement of such overwhelming old money power that it made Julian's flashy, new money penthouse look like a cheap rental. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, a car pulled up, a battered taxi. The back door opened and Serafina Hayes stepped out, followed by 2 men in skinny jeans holding fabric swatches. "What is this?" Serafina demanded, her eyes wide at the fleet of Rolls-Royces. "Is this a movie shoot? Who are you people?" She saw Elara, her face twisted into a mask of smug pity. "Oh, You're still here. Honey, you really need to take the hint. Julian, the staff is—" Evelyn Reed didn't even look at her. She simply said to Heiress, "Get her out of the way." Heiress, who had been trained in crowd control in the world's most dangerous war zones, didn't touch Serafina. He simply stepped in front of her, his body a 280-pound wall of muscle and bespoke tailoring. "Excuse me, Mum." Serafina, for the first time, looked intimidated. I'm Serafina Hayes. I live here now." Evelyn, one foot in the lead Rolls-Royce, paused. She turned, looking Serafina up and down as if she were a piece of uninspected livestock. "Ms. Hayes," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the traffic noise. "My name is Evelyn Reed. I am a lawyer for the Vance family. This building," she gestured, "this block is now a matter of private legal dispute. If you or your associates step foot inside that lobby, I will have you arrested for criminal trespass. Have a lovely afternoon." The door shut with a satisfying, vacuum-sealed thunk. The motorcade pulled away, leaving Serafina Hayes and her design team standing on the curb, next to a pile of luggage. Julian Thorne was having the best day of his life. He and Serafina were the #1 story on every gossip site. Titan and the Thespian, Julian Thorne makes it official with Serafina Hayes. His phone was blowing up. Not with investors, they didn't care about his personal life, but with the social crowd. He'd gotten text messages from 3 different movie producers and a fashion mogul. He was in. He was sitting in a celebratory lunch at Jean-Georges with his bankers from Morgan Stanley, finalizing the IPO roadshow. "The appetite for this is massive, Julian," said Robert Chen, the lead banker. "We're looking at an opening valuation of $4 billion. Your personal stake will be worth, well, you'll be a billionaire 3 times over." Julian smiled, swirling the 500 glass Burgundy in his glass. "I told you, Thorne Capital is the future." His phone buzzed. It was Belson, his lawyer. He ignored it. Buzzed again. Ignored. Buzzed a 3rd time. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Julian said, annoyed. "Have to take this. My divorce lawyer. Cleaning up a small mess." He stepped into the lobby. "Belson, what? I'm in a meeting." "Mr. Thorne, sir, we have a problem. A big problem." Belson's voice was squeaking. Mrs. Thorne, she has lawyers. Not just any lawyers." "What are you talking about? A $500 an hour divorce attorney. I'll buy him. Just serve the papers." "Sir, you don't understand. A woman named Evelyn Reed showed up. She threw me out. She said she was from Reed and Vanguard and the Vance family. She had a literal motorcade, sir. Rolls-Royces, Maybachs, bodyguards, like the Secret Service." Julian's blood went cold. "Vance? What Vance? Her maiden name?" "Yes, sir. She's—" "Mr. Thorne, who is your wife?" "She's a no-name art curator from Pittsburgh. Her family is in manufacturing. Small time." "Mr. Thorne," Belson said, his voice dropping. "I just ran the name. Reed and Vanguard is the private legal arm for Vance Global Steel. Not small-time manufacturing, sir. Sir, I'm talking the Vances. Marcus Vance, the Steel King. They own mines, shipping lanes, half of the skyscrapers in Chicago. They're not millionaires, sir. They're richer than you're about to be." Julian's glass of Burgundy slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. "That's not possible," Julian whispered. She buys her clothes at consignment shops. She worked at a gallery. She's a Lara." "Sir, they've changed the locks on the penthouse. They've secured it. Ms. Hayes is on the sidewalk. And, sir, I just got an email from Evelyn Reed. It's a notice of legal action. They're not just rejecting the settlement. They're filing a countersuit." for intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraudulent inducement in a marital contract, and, sir, attempted coercion of a high-risk pregnant patient. Julian couldn't breathe. And, Mr. Thorne, the paternity test. They're agreeing to it. In fact, they're demanding it. They're demanding you take one, too. And they're demanding a full 10-year forensic audit of Thorne Capital as part of the marital asset discovery. The roadshow. The IPO. A forensic audit. No, Julian choked out. No, she can't. The IPO, it's private. It's my company. Sir, Belson said, under New York law, it's marital property, and they're not just claiming 50%. They're claiming 100% of Thorne Capital. That's insane. On what grounds? On the grounds that your initial seed money, the $5 million you inherited, wasn't an inheritance at all. They claim it was a wedding gift to Elara from her father, deposited into a blind trust for her, which you then improperly leveraged to found your company. Julian dropped his phone. He stumbled back to the table. Robert Chen, the banker, was smiling. Everything all right, Julian? Julian looked at the man. He looked at the Stanser lunch bill. He looked at his life. It wasn't a small inheritance. It was a blind trust, a wedding gift. He'd told Elara it was from his long-lost, rich uncle. She'd just believed him. He'd thought her stupid. He'd thought her naive. He hadn't realized she was just rich. Rich in a way he couldn't even comprehend. So rich that $5 million was a rounding error, a gift she never even bothered to track. He had built his entire $4 billion empire on her money, and he had just served her with divorce papers and threatened to take her baby. Julian? Robert Chen asked, his smile fading. You look like you've seen a ghost. I have to go, Julian mumbled. He ran, not walked, ran from the restaurant, leaving his bankers sitting at the table. He had to get to Elara. He had to apologize. He had to stop this. He got to the St. Regis, where his doorman had, after a frantic call, told him Elara's motorcade had gone. He was met at the entrance by two very large men in black suits. Mr. Thorne, said Heiress, you are not welcome here. I need to see my wife. Elara, it's me. Mrs. Vance Thorne is under medical care and is not accepting visitors, especially not you. You are, in fact, legally barred from coming within 500 feet of her. What? That's not... I haven't been served. Heiress handed him a new folder. This one was not leather-bound. It was simple, white, and terrifying. It was a temporary restraining order, signed by the Chief Justice of the New York Supreme Court, citing credible threats to the physical and mental well-being of a high-risk pregnant patient. Julian tore it open. He was locked out of his own home. He was locked out of his company's accounts. Evelyn's team had just filed an injunction against the IPO, citing the fraudulent seed money. And he was locked away from his wife. She can't do this, he roared. She's not, Heiress said, with a hint of a smile. We are. Have a nice day, Mr. Thorne. Heiress and the other guard turned and walked back into the hotel, leaving Julian Thorne, the self-made billionaire, screaming on the sidewalk, a restraining order in his hand as the first fat drops of a cold November rain began to fall. The preliminary divorce hearing was a media war zone. Julian arrived first, attempting to project confidence in his Brioni suit, flanked by a $10,000 an hour legal team. He was bleeding money, and the IPO was officially delayed, citing market volatility. His investors were nervous. Julian, a reporter shouted, is it true your wife is a Vance? A Vance? Julian forced a grim smile. My wife and I are handling a private matter, privately. Then Elara arrived, The police had to clear the street for the 3-car Rolls-Royce convoy. The lead car's door was opened, and Elara stepped out. The media went silent. This was not the mousy curator's wife. This was Elara Vance. She wore a custom, deep emerald green coat, designed to accommodate her 5.5-month pregnancy with regal grace. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, powerful chignon. On her right hand, she wore a single, massive new ring, the Vance's family signet. She looked pale but powerful, and she glided up the steps, her gaze fixed forward, never once looking at the shell-shocked man she was still, for now, married to. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick. Julian and his team sat at one table. Elara and her Reed and Vanguard team sat at the other. Judge Margaret Walsh, known for having zero patience for arrogant men, entered. "This is a preliminary hearing," Judge Walsh said, "on the matter of Thorne versus Thorne, or I see here a counterfiling. Vance versus Thorne. Ms. Reed, your client is filing. Everything. This is quite a filing. Your Honor." Julian's lawyer, Mr. Arps, stood up, attempting a conciliatory tone. "My client, Mr. Thorne, wishes to de-escalate. He has re-evaluated his initial generous offer. He is now prepared to offer Mrs. Vance Thorne a one-time settlement of $25 million plus the penthouse in exchange for a clean divorce and her signature on the NDA." Julian was staring at Elara, a pathetic, pleading look on his face. "Take the deal. Please." Evelyn Reed stood. "Your Honor, we thank Mr. Arps for his re-evaluation. However, we reject it. Utterly. $25 million is what my client's family trust pays in catering for their annual foundation gala. It is not a settlement. It is an insult," Arps spluttered. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that we are not here to negotiate," Evelyn snapped. "We are here for a full forensic accounting of Vance assets, namely the $5 million seed money Mr. Thorne fraudulently converted to found his company, a company we are claiming 100% of, as it is marital property funded entirely by my client's trust. We are also here to see that my client, the mother of Mr. Thorne's child—" "Alleged child," Arps interrupted. "A fatal mistake." Evelyn Reed smiled. "Ah, yes, the paternity. Your Honor, my client is more than willing to submit to a test. In fact, she demands it. We have already had a non-invasive prenatal test performed." She slid a file across the table. "Mr. Thorne is, indeed, the father. With 99.999% certainty. The real question, Your Honor." And here, Evelyn's voice dropped, becoming lethally precise, "is what else a full forensic audit of Mr. Thorne's finances will reveal." This was the killing blow. "I'm sure you're aware of the IPO," Evelyn continued, "but you're less aware of how Mr. Thorne secured his second and third round funding. He went to several less traditional lenders. Hedge funds in the Cayman Islands, private lenders with, shall we say, Russian-sounding names. Lenders who do not appreciate market volatility. Lenders who will be fascinated to learn that his primary asset, his company, is actually the disputed property of a rival." Julian went white. Judge Walsh leaned forward. "And who," the judge asked, "is this a rival?" "Me," Elara said. It was the first time she had spoken. Her voice, though quiet, cut through the courtroom. Julian finally looked at her. "Me," Elara repeated. "You didn't just build your company on my money, Julian. You built it on my father's. The $5 million was a test you failed." Evelyn Reed provided the final nail. "Your Honor, we are not asking for a division of assets. We are filing for an annulment of the marriage based on fraudulent inducement. We are also filing for a full liquidation of Thorne Capital to repay the initial loan, plus interest, to the Vance Trust. And, as a separate matter, we are filing a civil suit for 100% of the remaining assets on behalf of the unborn child to be placed in a trust, managed by me. Julian's lawyer sank into his chair. I, Julian stammered, leaping to his feet. Elara, please, I love you. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. It was the IPO, the stress. Elara looked at him, and for the first time, she felt nothing but cold, distant pity. You don't love me, Julian, she said, her voice clear. You don't even know me. You loved the idea of the broke girl who made you feel like a big man. You weren't in love with me. You were in love with your own reflection. She stood up. We're done here, Evelyn. You can't go, Julian yelled. Elara, you'll ruin me. Elara paused at the door. She looked back at him, a man completely broken. No, Julian, she said. I won't. You already did. The fallout was not a financial earthquake. It was a financial apocalypse. Julian, in a desperate, last-ditch attempt to save himself, tried to declare bankruptcy. He tried to hide personal assets, to wire money to an offshore account in Panama. He had forgotten who he was dealing with. Evelyn Reed's team of forensic accountants were not accountants. They were, as she put it, financial bloodhounds. They found the Panama account in 4 hours. They found the forgotten Patek Philippe watch collection. They found the deed to a gifted condo in Miami that he'd bought for Serafina, which they immediately seized. But the real, crushing, final twist wasn't in the courtroom. It was in a quiet, wood-paneled office at the headquarters of Reed and Vanguard. Julian had been invited to this meeting. His lawyers from Skadden, Arps had quit, citing irreconcilable conflicts and unpaid bills. He was now represented by a court-appointed, shell-shocked public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Julian sat, a hollowed-out shell of a man, across a 20-foot mahogany table from Elara, Evelyn Reed, and a man Julian had never seen before. An older man, in his late 60s, with Elara's grey eyes and a face that looked like it had been carved from a mountain. He wore a simple, dark grey suit, but it fit him with the authority of a military uniform. It was Marcus Vance, the Steel King. Mr. Thorne, Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but it rumbled with a base-level power that made Julian flinch. I've been reviewing your life's work, Thorne Capital. It's impressive. What you built, the leverage, the exposure, very new money. Julian said nothing. You're a gambler, Marcus continued, and you're good at it. You took my $5 million and you parlayed it into a $4 billion valuation, a house of cards, to be sure, but a very tall one. Mr. Vance, sir, Julian began. I loved her. I still do. This is... Stop, Marcus said. It wasn't a request. Don't insult my daughter, and don't insult my intelligence. You don't love her. You don't even see her. You saw a prop, a charming accessory. He leaned forward. Evelyn, here, wants to liquidate you. She wants to take your company, break it into little pieces, and sell it for scrap to pay back the Russian investors you conned. It's a clean solution. A small, desperate spark of hope ignited in Julian. But I, Marcus said, am a builder. I don't like breaking things. I like acquiring them. Evelyn slid one final document across the table to Julian. This, Evelyn explained, is not a divorce settlement. This is a stock purchase agreement. Julian read the first line. His public defender gasped. We are not liquidating Thorne Capital, Evelyn said. We are absorbing it. Vance Global Steel's new Vance Ventures technology arm is acquiring Thorne Capital, for the grand sum of $1. $1? Julian choked. It's worth billions. It's worth nothing, Marcus corrected. It's an empty shell, leveraged to the hilt, facing half a dozen fraud investigations, and whose primary investors are unhappy. In fact, we, he gestured to himself and Evelyn, are the only thing standing between you and a gentleman named Dmitri Volkov, who, I'm told, is very keen to discuss default penalties with you. In person. Julian's face went ashen. So, Marcus continued, here is the real settlement, Julian. We will not be pursuing an annulment. Ilara, it seems, wants the divorce. She wants to be a divorcee, not a victim. So this is a divorce. You will sign this document. It gives you exactly what you offered her. What? Evelyn slid a second document. You will receive a one-time, non-negotiable payout of $500,000. You will be given a 2-bedroom condominium in Murray Hill, and you will sign a comprehensive, ironclad non-disclosure agreement, barring you from ever speaking about Ilara, her family, or Vance Global Steel for the rest of your natural life. It was his own offer, word for word. And, Evelyn added, all child support, medical and educational expenses for the baby will be handled in perpetuity by the Vance Trust. Your name will be on the birth certificate, but you will have 0 parental rights. Any attempt to contact the child or Ilara will be a violation of this agreement and the permanent restraining order, and will result in, it will result in Mr. Volkov getting your new address. Julian stared at the papers. His entire world, his billions, his penthouse, his Patek collection, his identity, all gone, reduced to 500 toinzirog and a condo he used to mock. Ilara had been silent the entire time. Now, she spoke. Sign it, Julian, she said. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic hatred. Why? Why are you doing this? You could have just left. You could have had half. Because you threatened my child, Ilara said, her voice quiet and deadly. You used my baby as a bargaining chip. You put the nursery in storage. You tried to make me, a high-risk pregnant woman, homeless. You didn't just want a divorce, Julian. You wanted an erasure. You wanted to destroy me. This, she gestured to the papers, this isn't a settlement. This is a mirror. This is you, getting exactly what you deserve. You get to live the life you thought was generous enough for me. Julian, trembling, picked up the pen. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Evelyn. He looked at Ilara. He signed. He signed away his company. He signed away his parental rights. He signed away his life. Heiress, Marcus Vance said into an intercom. Mr. Thorne is ready to leave. See him to his new home, and make sure he gets there. Julian stood. He was just a man in an expensive, rumpled suit. He walked out of the room, not with a bang, but with the quiet, pathetic shuffle of a man who had lost a war he didn't even know he was fighting. 3 months later, Ilara Vance gave birth to a healthy, 7-pound baby boy. She was not in the 10th floor maternity ward. She was in her own maternity ward, a custom-built, state-of-the-art medical facility on the top floor of the new Vance Thorne Center for Maternal Health at Weill Cornell, a $100 million donation she had made. Her father, Marcus, was the first person to hold his grandson after Ilara. He has your eyes, Marcus said, his voice thick with an emotion Ilara had never heard before. And God willing your mother's kindness, not mine. He'll have yours too, Ilara said, smiling. He's going to need that stubbornness. She named the baby Michael, after her late grandfather. Michael Vance. The world she had re-entered was different from the one she'd left. She wasn't Elara Thorne, the quiet curator, and she wasn't Elara Vance, the runaway heiress. She was just Elara, a mother, a CEO. She hadn't just taken back her name, she'd taken back her power. Thorne Capital was no more. In its place, Elara had launched the Vance Thorne New Ventures Fund. She'd kept the Thorne name as a permanent public reminder of what happens when you underestimate a Vance, a fund dedicated to investing only in female-founded tech and biotech companies. It was already valued at $10 billion, and it was actually making a profit. She had moved out of the St. Regis. She'd sold the Fifth Avenue penthouse, the gilded cage, and all of Julian's cold beige furniture. The proceeds, all $75 million, were the first donation to her new medical center. She and Michael now lived in a beautiful, warm, sprawling brownstone in the West Village, filled with books, art that she loved, and the sound of a baby's laughter. And Julian was seen sometimes, a haunted-looking man, sitting alone at the bar in a TGI Fridays in Murray Hill. The $500,000 was long gone, mostly to pay off the other debts he'd racked up. He'd tried to violate the NDA once, getting drunk and telling a Page 6 reporter a wild story. The reporter, who was on the Vance payroll, had simply deleted the recording. The next day, Julian's hot water had been turned off for a week. He'd never spoken to a reporter again. He was a ghost, a non-entity, erased. The final scene was not of vengeance, it was of peace. Elara stood on the terrace of her brownstone, holding Michael. The city glittered before them. Her phone buzzed. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Evelyn, but with a different kind of message. "Market's open. New fund is up 12%. You're a natural, boss. See you at the 10 a.m. meeting." Elara smiled, kissed her son's head, and walked back inside, ready for work. She had taken her father's steel and forged it into something new, something stronger, something hers. And that's the story of Elara Vance, a woman who was pushed to her absolute limit, only to find that her limit was so much further than her deceiver ever imagined. Julian thought he was a titan, but he was just a small man standing in the shadow of a true dynasty. He didn't just lose his money, he lost his name, his legacy, and his future. All while Elara reclaimed hers. This story is a powerful reminder. Never ever underestimate a person you've wronged. You might think you're holding all the cards, but you have no idea what kind of royal flush they're hiding. What did you think of Elara's revenge? Was it justice, or was it too cold? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story of high-stakes drama and ultimate karma, you won't want to miss what we have coming next. Please, like this video, share it with someone who loves a good revenge story, and most importantly, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. You have no idea what story we're breaking down next.